Lord David Wulfson, thank you so much for welcoming us to the House of Lords. It's a real honour to be here. And can I ask you about the first time that you met Rabbi Sacks, if you remember, and what was that meeting like?
The first time I met Rabbi Sacks was when he came to Israel when I was at Yeshivat HaKotel, between school and university, and he gave a speech to various groups, and one of them was a group of people who were at various yeshivot. I saw him there, and I was going to Cambridge after Yeshivat HaKotel, and I knew he'd studied at Cambridge, so I went up to him and said I was going to go, and that started a relationship. And as I took on roles in the Jewish community while he was chief rabbi, I obviously saw him a lot and discussed various things with him then.
Could you just tell us a bit what the House of Lords is and what might have been the significance of Rabbi Sacks being here?
Well, the House of Lords is one of the two parts of the British Parliament. We have the House of Commons, who are elected, and the people in the House of Commons belong to political parties. In the House of Lords, people are appointed, normally for their whole life. Some of them on a party basis, but quite a lot are what we call crossbenchers. They don't sit on the government side, they don't sit on the opposition side. They really sit physically in the middle, and so they're not party political. So in comes somebody like Rabbi Sacks, and what's fantastic when you think about it is that there weren't really many Jewish hereditary peers, because there weren't many Jews who had a hereditary peerage. In comes somebody like Rabbi Sacks, somebody who wouldn't have been in the House of Lords 50, 60, 70 years ago, wearing a kippah, being Jewish in the public square, which is really what he was all about, and standing up at the heart of British democracy for Jews, Judaism, Jewish thought, Jewish conscience.
I, Jonathan Baron Sacks, do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, her heirs and successors, according to law.
We have 16 bishops who sit in the House of Lords. To have a chief rabbi was relatively new. Before Rabbi Sacks, Lord Jacobowitz, his predecessor, sat in the House of Lords, and Rabbi Sacks was the second. And to date, they are the only two who've sat in the House of Lords.
What was the significance of Rabbi Sacks being in the House of Lords?
Just the fact that you've got somebody like Rabbi Sacks sitting in the chamber as a chief rabbi, wearing a kippah, sort of obviously Jewish and having a leading role in the Jewish community, that in itself said something about the Jewish community, about, I would also say, the British democratic system which allows him to be there, and also, of course, about Rabbi Sacks. So before we get to what he said, the mere fact that he was here had significance.
Which aspects of Jewish identity did he bring to the fore in order to highlight issues in broader British society?
He really focused on a number of areas, obviously religious areas, the role of religion in society, the Middle East, education, the causes which were part of his being, he spoke on. And there are some people, when they speak in the House of Lords, people walk in from other parts of the building to listen to. He was one of those people. When you saw on the monitor that Rabbi Sacks was speaking, you came in to listen to what he had to say. Because he didn't speak all that often. He chose when he wanted to speak. But when he did speak, it was worth listening to.
We who pray for peace understand by that word a state in which I recognize your right to exist and you recognize mine. That is what peace minimally means.
And can you give us some examples maybe of some of those messages that he put across speeches in the House of Lords?
Well, he spoke very powerfully on the Middle East and explained the conflict in the Middle East cannot be understood just in historical terms. There is a religious dimension to it as well. And of course, part of his work was to reach out to Muslim thinkers, to Muslim leaders, to try and find common ground. So he spoke very powerfully about that. He spoke extremely well about education. You know his famous saying, If you want to defend a country, you build an army. If you want to defend a civilization, you build schools.
Because to defend a country, you need an army, but to defend a civilization, you need schools.
Well, that's what he brought to his speeches in the House of Lords, and you learned something from them. I mean, he was an educator, and he was educating people when he spoke in the House of Lords as much as when he spoke at the London School of Jewish Studies or Yeshiva University or anywhere else.
Freedom is not achieved merely by removing a tyrant. They require a sustained effort of education and a balanced supply of information. Without these, democracy can descend into mob rule and from there to a new tyranny, exactly as Plato thought it would.
Can you give us any specific examples of speeches that particularly moved you?
There was a speech he gave about the role of religion in the UK. And it was a typical Rabbi Sacks speech because he started off basing himself in the Bible, as he often did. So he quoted the famous verse from Jeremiah that you should seek the peace of the city where you live.
Jeremiah wrote a letter to the Jewish exiles in Babylon, in which he said this: "Seek the welfare of the city to which you have gone and pray to God on its behalf, for in its peace and prosperity you will find peace and prosperity." And
of course, Jews in Britain, that's why every Shabbat we say a prayer for the royal family. Jews in America will say a prayer for the president, etc. That's throughout Jewish history. But then he went on and he asked, well, how do we apply that now that we live in a multicultural society? What is the role of religion in the UK?
The good news about religion is that it creates communities based on altruism and trust. It teaches people to make sacrifices for the sake of others. It builds social capital. The bad news is that every community divides as it unites, because for every us, there is a them, the people not like us.
And he followed his idea of covenant, which was central to his thought. And he said what he wanted is that all religious communities should make a covenant with the country. And the covenant would be, in exchange for religious freedom, we will uphold the values of the society, we will engage with society, we will become part of society. And he didn't do it in terms of contract, he didn't do it in terms of declaration, he did it in terms of covenant.
I have a simple proposal to make. I believe that all Britain's faith communities should be invited to make a voluntary covenant with Britain, articulating our responsibilities to others and to the nation as a whole, so that we can be true to our faith while being a blessing to others regardless of theirs.
So I think that's a really good example of a speech here by Rabbi Sacks, based on the Bible, very focused on the issues of the day, but also rooted in his own philosophy of covenant. He took his Judaism and brought it into the public square. One idea which has always resonated with me is Abraham's speech, an argument with God about saving Sodom and Gomorrah, is that Abraham says, will you save the cities if there are 50 righteous people, and in the Hebrew, betoch ha'ir. They've got to be in the centre of public life. Because Judaism, we don't believe in monasteries. We don't believe in people sitting on the top of a rock somewhere or a hill and creating their own religious community. Normative Judaism is being part of society. And that's what Rabbi Sacks did. That's what Rabbi Sacks showed, that there is no need for compromise. You don't have to say, well, if I want to be in the public square, I need to be a little less Jewish. You can do both. He did both. So to that extent, he's an example, not just to me, but to everybody who's Jewish and in public life today. And I think that's a message which is so, so important. Remember, he said, non-Jews respect Jews who respect Judaism. They are embarrassed by Jews who are embarrassed by Judaism. And he was right.
David, thank you so much for having us here in the House of Lords. It's been a really fascinating interview. Thank you.